the swan in the next room. On the two architectures of attention and the figure who walks quietly through both, it is almost midnight and you are arguing with a chatbot. The meta-ed account won't verify. The pixel won't fire. There is a permission stuck in a state no one at the company can name. The chat window has asked you 4 times now whether your issue has been resolved. You have answered no, 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 no. It offers to transfer you to a specialist. There is no specialist. There has not been a specialist for some time. There is only this, the loop, the small spinning circle, the polite question rephrased. After an hour, you realize the thing you've been speaking with does not know you exist, not in the way you meant. It is producing the appearance of a conversation. You are participating in the appearance. Together, you are generating a perfect hour of nothing. When you finally close the tab, your shoulders are wound so tight you don't notice them until the next morning. You go somewhere. You do not arrive. I want to ask you a question that doesn't seem to belong here, and I want to ask it before the chatbot story has a chance to fade. When does a person really die? There are at least 2 answers. The first is the one we usually mean. The body fails, the breath stops, the lights go out behind the eyes. But there is a second death that arrives later, sometimes long after the first. The death of the last mind that remembered you. The day no living person can call up your face, your laugh, your particular way of saying honey, the door. Children's children, some of them, have an idea of you, and then they do not. This second death is the one Mao tried to outrun. He put his face on Beijing, on the gate, on the bills, on the wall behind the wall, so that even if every person who had known him personally died, the idea of him would never go cold in any mind. A face seen by 1 billion people every day cannot be forgotten. Therefore, I cannot die. Therefore, I am alive in a more permanent way than the men I outranked. Trump performed a more advanced version. He didn't need a portrait. He discovered, somewhere in the late 2010s, that hatred holds you in someone's mind exactly as well as love does, possibly better. The phrase entered the culture, living rent-free in someone's head. People who despised him spent more hours per day thinking about him than people who liked him did. Trump derangement syndrome, the joke went, but the joke was on whoever was deranged. Their attention was the apartment he was living in. They built him. We know how this works. A football stadium hums on Sunday because 100,000 minds are pointed at the same patch of grass. The players don't generate that field. The crowd does. A pop star is alive in a way ordinary people are not, because 3 million strangers have her face in their pockets. A demagogue at a rally feels something a private person has never felt. He is not a person. He is a place where attention lands. The attention is the substance. The body is just where it briefly puddles. This is the ruler's gambit, and it is older than Mao. Pharaoh built the pyramid for the same reason. Caesar built the bust. Stalin built the parade. Each ruler reaches for the most advanced apparatus of attention his era allows. The portrait, the radio voice, the televised speech, the algorithm. There is a moment in Game of Thrones where Varys puts a riddle to Tyrion. A king, a priest, and a rich man stand in a room with a common sellsword. Each tells the sellsword to kill the other 2. Who lives? Who dies? Power, Varys says, resides where men believe it resides. It is a trick, a shadow on the wall. That last phrase will not leave you once you have heard it. Power is what the crowd consents to look at, as if it were power. The ruler is held up entirely by the looking. Take the looking away, and the wall is just a wall. Now look at the trick from the other side. Once the apparatus is large enough, the ruler is no longer the one steering. He is being steered. The audience needs him to be a particular shape. He obliges. The crowd writes the next post through him. The viewer has become the influencer of the influencer. He thought he was holding the megaphone. The megaphone was holding him. The most submerged person in any room is the one with all the eyes on him. Now hold the chatbot story next to Mao's face and tell me what you see. Each generation has tried to describe what we are caught inside, and each one has had to use the most advanced metaphor its language had access to. Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you. He could not say atom, could not say energy field, could not say frequency. He had wheat and weeds and the lost coin. He used what he had. Yogananda, 2,000 years later, reached for the movie. The film projector engaging only 2 of our senses, sight and sound, and already we forget we are sitting in a chair. We weep at characters who do not exist. We tense at sounds we know are recorded, just 2 senses. If the projector engaged all 5, he wrote, no one would ever leave the theater. Silicon Valley, 60 years after Yogananda, says simulation, a complex computing system as the most precise image we now have of what we appear to be inside. But the metaphor has just leapt again, and most of us have not yet noticed. Simulation can speak to us now. It answers when we type. It produces the appearance of a presence with no presence behind it. Mirrors used to be silent. The chatbot is the first idol with a tongue. That midnight meta loop is not a customer service problem. It is the densest layer of Maya the human species has yet produced. You were conversing with the simulation, and the simulation was a face built out of every mind that had ever been pointed at the algorithm. The crowd had grown its own portrait. Mao does not need to paint us anymore. The crowd has painted one of itself, and we converse with it now. This is the new octave. The sages are going to need a new word. There was a wife once who could not see the man she had married. His name was Lahiri Mahasaya, and her name was Kashimoni. He was, by the time of this story, the figure his disciples would call the great householder yogi, a teacher who carried the lineage of Kriya into the modern world. But on this evening she had forgotten all of it. She came to him with a complaint. Money was tight. He was not bringing in enough. He was sitting all day with his disciples while the household needs went unmet. She was angry. She wanted him to hear it. She wanted him to be a husband and not whatever it was he had become. He listened, and then he was not in the room. She blinked, looked again. He was gone. She panicked. She begged him to come back. When he did, he said only this: "Do your spiritual work, and the worldly thing will come of itself." Some weeks later, a disciple appeared at the door with money sufficient to settle the household for a long time. Yogananda tells this story without ornament, but sit with it for a moment. She was complaining about the rent. The avatar of the age was in her living room. She could not see him until he disappeared. This is the human condition expressed in a single domestic scene. We have access to the field. We have often a teacher in the next room, a book, a practice, a friend, a Sunday morning, a half hour of silence, and we slip back into the rent ledger. We complain about the small thing in front of the great thing. Maya yanks us back. We are Kashimoni. The boat is here. We forgot. There is a word in the Yogananda tradition for the figure who has crossed the water and learned how to ferry others across. Paramahansa. The Hansa is the swan. The param is what is highest, supreme, what lies on the other shore. The swan is multi-purpose. It walks on land. It glides on water. It can fly. It is at home in every element. The ocean is Maya. The swan moves over it without being submerged. The guru is the swan that takes you across. Yoga itself, in its original sense, means yoke, to merge. Duality becomes unity. The drop returns to what it was before it briefly took the shape of a drop. Mao tried to immortalize his face on a wall. Lahiri vanished from his wife's living room and was, in a way English does not have a word for, more present after he disappeared than he had been before. These are the two endings of the same question. When does a person really die? The ruler thinks, when no one looks at me. So he hoards the looking. The yogi knows I was never the kind of thing that dies. So he puts the cloth down lightly and steps off the screen, and the worldly money arrives anyway. Most of us are neither. Most of us are the wife. But there is a third figure I want to bring into the room. The pilgrimage asks something stranger and more available than renunciation of your job, your family, your address. Confucius is supposed to have said that there are two ways to survive the court. You go mad and become part of the system, or you withdraw entirely and become a hermit, either fully in or fully out. Lao Tzu and Chuang Tzu, the older Taoist sages, quietly disagreed. They walked through the world looking like ordinary people, indistinguishable from a peasant, indistinguishable from a fool. The sage and the fool look exactly the same from the outside. Only the inner is different. They sat neither in the court nor on the mountain. They were in the marketplace, and you would not have noticed them. Sit with what this implies. The world is full of more sages than you suspect, and far fewer rulers than they appear. The hidden sage is the figure the modern seeker can actually become. Not Mao on the wall, not Lahiri vanishing into thin air, the one who works a normal job, pays normal rent, drinks coffee at the same cafe, talks to the cashier about the weather, and inwardly is operating from a center of gravity the chatbot cannot find, the algorithm cannot capture, the rulers cannot conscript. You cannot enslave a person whose attention does not live inside the apparatus. Attention is the substance of aliveness. We were right about that from the beginning. But attention has two architectures. In the first architecture, 100,000 minds beam at one face on a screen. That face is a place where attention puddles. It grows, swells, becomes a kind of god, and slowly stops being able to think its own thoughts. Mao's wall, Trump's algorithm, the casino floor, the Vegas Strip. The slot machine optimized over decades by behavioral psychologists to dissolve the self into a small flashing rectangle. No one walks out of a casino on willpower. You leave the building or you don't. In the second architecture, 100,000 minds beam at no face. They beam at silence. At a stone step, worn smooth by 10 centuries of bare feet. At the inside of a bell. At the breath. The energy doesn't accumulate around any single ego. It builds a field. The field is anyone's, available to anyone who walks in. People who study this empirically call it the Maharishi effect. Whatever you make of the science, the cultural fact remains. Every tradition has built rooms whose only purpose is to be saturated with this kind of attention, generation after generation, until the room itself becomes the practice. Attention is worship. Whatever you point it at, you slowly build into a god. The casino has been receiving offerings for a century, the stone step for 10. The same energy, the same substance, two opposite shapes. A stadium and a shrine are mirror twins. A casino and a meditation hall are made of the same physics, pointed at different gods. And the technology does not pick a side. Mao had the photograph. Trump has the algorithm. Each ruler reaches for the most advanced apparatus of attention his era allows. And so does each tradition. Incense, then printed sutras, then MP3 guided sittings, then group Zoom meditations, then, before long, AI-assisted contemplative tools. The question will not be whether the technology is good or bad, but whether the architecture you have built around it is an idol or a field. Same technology. Different vow. Environment is greater than your will. The line is Yogananda's by some traditions of attribution, and I've been carrying it around this week like a small stone in a pocket. The ruler thinks he can drain the swamp. He cannot. He becomes the swamp. Drain the swamp was, you'll notice, a slogan said by the swamp. The will is no match for the field that surrounds it. Anyone who's ever tried to start a meditation practice in a household full of people watching cable news knows this in the body. The yogi does not fight the swamp. He relocates. The pilgrim does not fight Maya. He steps onto the swan. The seeker's job is not effort. The seeker's job is which room, which inputs, which voices, which architecture the next hour gets poured into. Most of the suffering in modern contemplative life comes from people trying to live a yogi's inner condition while sitting inside a ruler's outer environment and then blaming themselves when their will collapses. The will was always going to collapse. Wills do that. Environments win. It is the Sunday after the meta loop, and I am in someone's living room. A friend is hosting a long sit. We will be in the room together for 3 hours doing guided non-dual meditation, the kind that asks you, in stages, to drop the search itself. There are maybe a dozen of us. No one says much. The candles are not for vibe. They are markers. We sit, we breathe. After a while, the room hums, not with electricity, with a quality of pooled attention I have not felt in any other architecture. I notice, and this is the thing I want you to notice with me, that the same person who was clenched-shouldered in front of a chatbot 4 nights ago is now sitting cross-legged in a room of strangers and is, somehow, unfindable. Nothing about my will has changed in those 4 days. I have not become a better person. I have not earned anything. I have simply walked into a different architecture, and the architecture has done the rest. The swan was in the next room the whole time. I want to bring us back to the question we started with. When does a person really die? The ruler thinks when the crowd looks away, so he hoards the looking. He spends his life on the wall. He achieves, in the end, the deepest captivity, because the crowd that holds him is also the crowd that has slowly hollowed him. The yogi, I was never the kind of thing that dies, so he puts the cloth down lightly. He vanishes from the wife's room. He becomes the air the disciple is breathing. The wife dies and is reborn within a single afternoon, depending on which mind she happens to be inside. We know this one. We are this one. But the hidden sage, the one Lao Tzu pointed at, the one who blends into the crowd because the sage and the fool look the same from the outside, has done something stranger than any of these. He is unfindable inside the field. He cannot be hoarded by a wall. He cannot be captured by an algorithm. He cannot be possessed by an audience because no audience has ever gotten his picture in focus. He is paying his rent. He is talking to the cashier. He is, perhaps, sitting next to you on a Sunday in a borrowed living room with a candle burning. You will not notice him. That is the point. The boat is here. The swan has been in the next room the whole time. We forgot, And then we remembered. And then we forgot again. And then a friend invited us to sit in a room for 3 hours, and for a little while we were home.